I keep wanting to sing da-na, da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na. But it's not that. Spiral from the Book of Saw is coming out tonight at the cinemas here in France, and I got the chance to watch it online a couple of weeks ago, so I prepared this review in advance, and I thought I would give you my opinion before you actually go to the cinema and waste your money. I have a weird history with the Saw franchise. First of all, when I was little, so when the Saw franchise was actually at the very peak when it comes to the audience reception, I wasn't really into it. I remember I had a friend who really wanted to watch it, but he mostly wanted to traumatize me with it. And I remember that they were all watching it and I was just like looking at my phone for the entire film, and I just keep hearing these people being tortured and screaming. Screaming, that's all I remember from that particular night. But then a couple of years later, I started going back to it. When I was back at uni during my third year, I actually decided to write an essay about the Saw franchise, and I took as a thesis a weird scientific experiment that I wanted to take. I watched all the Saw films one after the other without any interruptions, not counting of course and maybe I might have made some food so that I could actually eat in front of it. And then I wrote a paper on what is the quintessential way of experiencing horror franchises, and my thesis was based on the fact that the best way of experiencing a horror franchise is to watch them all back to back without any kind of interruptions. I had a really fun time writing that essay and experiencing the Saw films in that particular way. It's one of those experiences that I really recommend to people just because it's just super weird. So that is my history with the Saw franchise. I mean, when it comes to the Saw franchise and when it comes to the fact that people have been trying to keep it alive for so long, it doesn't bother me that much, especially because I find that it's one of those really weird franchises where they try to keep rewriting the canonical history with each new installment. So it's kind of like, even if you don't enjoy a Saw film, you always find something interesting about it.
I thought whoever came up with this premise is messed up.
No, it's not creepy at all.
Especially when it comes to the plot twists, right? But when Jigsaw came out, it really felt that they were trying to push it a bit too far. They were trying to reimagine this franchise in a bad way, and Spiral is exactly that. They're trying to inject new energy in the franchise, and it's really not working. As a starting point for this review, I will read you my Letterboxd review for this film, and then I will go more into details about it. So I gave it 1 star over 5. 1 star is a really bad score, coming from me of course. Just so you know, a score above 3 means that it's a movie that is worth rewatching. And if it's below 3, it means it's mediocre, forgettable, if not even disgusting. This kind of fuck-ty-fuck, macho, sweaty representation of the police force belongs to the 80s. It's kind of insane that they keep shoveling this shit down our throat in 2021. Leave the cop banter to Shane Black and actually make a Saw movie, not a Fincher-inspired mess of a movie. Bousman was clearly not the right person to inject some new energy in the franchise. This movie clearly makes me side with the Jigsaw copycat. I mean, corrupt and murderous cops? Fuck them. The poster is the only good thing about this movie. Also, it's kind of hilarious how we spend so much time investigating and so little actually watching people prove that they want to live, which is the whole tagline of the franchise, right?
You see, the knowledge of death changes everything. If I were to tell you the exact date and time of your own death, those who don't appreciate life do not deserve life.
This isn't a Saw movie. The tagline of this film shouldn't be, do you want to play a game? But more like, do you want to, oh shit, you're already dead? Okay, back to Chris Rock freaking out, I guess, lol. P.S. The ending of this film and who the killer is incredibly predictable. This is among the worst Saw films ever. I saw the plot twist coming from a mile away, and everyone will see it from a mile away. You don't have to be a film scholar, you don't have to be a huge fan of the Saw franchise to actually see it coming. This is one of those weird films that it feels like it got stuck into production between 3 and 5 years ago, and it's finally seeing the light of day today. It kind of reminds me of the most recent Fantastic Four or the New Mutants as well, where you're watching something that really doesn't belong to the political and cultural climate of today. Let's start by talking about the cinematography and the color scheme of this film. I've never been really attached to the visual look of the Saw franchise, so it's not like I find it insulting that they decided to go for something different. Plus, they actually kept the weird, camera shake-ups, the weird shuffling editing when people are getting tortured, so there are some visual cues that this is still a Saw film. There are some callbacks to the original films, but they are so incredibly pathetic that they actually seem to be parodying the films instead of actually referencing to this huge mythology. So what about the traps, you'll ask me? Because most of the times we watch these films for the traps, for the creativity that goes behind all different weird ways in which these people try to kill our main characters, right? The traps are just torture porn. I know that the Saw franchise is within the subgenre of torture porn, but when I say this specifically, I mean that these traps here are just there to kill people. They're not part of any narrative elements like in the past few films. Traps are actually not that interesting because there are not a lot of stakes, because we know after the first trap that there is no way that they can actually escape these traps, and it fucking sucks. I know that they've been establishing for so long that these copycat killers are really bad at creating Saw traps, and very often they create traps that are biased against the victims, of course, because they just want to punish these people. They don't want to do the whole John Kramer thing of I want to play a game, show me that you actually want to be alive. They don't do that. They don't do that, and the traps kind of reflect that aspect of the story and of the copycats' characters. But I'm getting tired of that shit. I mean, there's a guy who gets his tongue turned out because he's a liar. Another one gets his fingers turned out because I guess that, I don't know, he used his fingers to pull on the trigger. Because when you think about it, you could have taken his arms, you could have taken his brain, because all of those parts were actually related to using the gun, right? To be a corrupt cop. Or you could have taken even his legs. If you think about it, for example, if he didn't have legs that day, then he wouldn't have been at the job and he wouldn't have been a shitty corrupted cop and killed that person, right? I mean, the lady commissioner gets her face completely burned in tar, and that's because I suppose that she's got a pretty face. I don't know. There is no real reason behind it, and it really sucks. Think about the highlights of the Saw franchise, and you have that scene, for example, where Amanda has to dig through a pool of needles to find something to save all the other people, and that is a trap that is actually related to her directly because she used to be a junkie. Since we're talking about the traps, let's talk about the final trap of this film and also the ending. So I mean, if you still want to watch it and if you still want to go and see it at the cinema, I guess skip this part and go to the next comments that I have to make about the film. But the final trap of this film makes no sense. So the copycat killer gives him a choice. He can either shoot the target and save his father, who is basically being hanged to death and he's slowly bleeding out, or he can shoot the copycat killer. So basically this whole trap is based around the idea of loyalty. So he can either show loyalty to his father by killing the copycat killer, or he can show loyalty to the copycat killer because the copycat killer has been trying to, to teach him a lesson and prove him that the system is corrupt and that the trap is the only way to actually save the world and bring world peace or whatever the fuck,
I've never murdered anyone in my life. The decisions are up to them.
Okay.
And so we're in this weird situation where basically if he saves his father, he will prove that he doesn't believe in the copycat killer way of doing. But if he shoots the copycat killer, then it means that I don't even know. Honestly, like, I'm trying to explain to you what the last act of this film is like, but the more I try to find some kind of sense in it, and the more I'm getting messed up.
Circus, Afro circus, Afro circus, Afro polka dot, Afro.
Really?
So the only way to prove loyalty to the copycat killer would be to not do anything and let his father die and then escape with him, right? Then the copycat killer would be like, oh, you succeeded, oh, we're together forever, let's get married, or whatever the fuck. I don't know why the copycat killer presents the dilemma as a shooting dilemma. You either shoot the target and save your father, or you shoot me and get your revenge, I suppose. Because it's stupid. Maybe there is just one bullet in the gun, so you can either shoot the target and save his father or shoot the copycat killer. I'm getting confused. The entire film was leading to something that didn't really make sense, and the copycat killer is just standing there being like, I won, I proved what I had to prove, everyone sucks. And then he just leaves and that's it. But it's never actually been the case, you know, when it comes to the Jigsaw puzzles, because very often the two options that he presents to you, those are the actual options, and you have to find out which is the best one, either by being more clever or by really analyzing the wordplays that Jigsaw tends to do in the messages, because very often the answer to the game is in the message itself. I mean, if they wanted to try to inject new energy in this franchise, they should have worked on the characters, because the characters in this film are awful. The victims are completely awful. The main characters, they're always shouting at each other, and they have these huge, big cops being stuck in the 80s personalities that I really, really despise. The new Jigsaw actually looks like a millennial version of Jigsaw. Sam Jackson is basically just playing himself, so I don't really care what happens to him because he's Sam Jackson. And the only character I liked was no one. There isn't a single character that I liked in this film. Usually I actually like the Jigsaw voice, but they changed the Jigsaw voice for the tape recordings and it sounds so fucking stupid.
Hello, Detective Boswick. I want to play a game. The 3 train is arriving in 2 minutes. It is up to you to decide if this will be your final stop.
It sounds so bad, it's robotic, and it sounds like a joke, and it's not scary at all. At the end of the day, am I waiting for a Spiral 2? God no, I really don't want to see a Spiral 2 because Bousman I feel like was a really bad choice for reinvigorating this franchise because he's directed way too many Saw films. I feel like the script and its premise was interesting, but you really needed a director who would make different choices and really bring out the performances, even of the characters that we are supposed to see as bad people. If the only good person is the main character and everyone else is corrupt and disgusting, then what is the point of seeing this film? What is the point of watching this film? Because I mean, if you look at all the other Saw films, you always add criminals, you always add people who cheated on others, but you still rooted for some of them just because it was always a battle in between who is the worst human being and who is gonna survive this by being the worst human being possible, right? But there is no surviving in this film. This film is literally just about torturing people, and even though it might seem cathartic to torture bad people, it's not what the Saw franchise really is for, and that's why I feel like they really went for all the bad choices when it comes to creating a new Saw film. Here I actually wanted to try to write a good Spiral film, and I wanted to ask you, and I wanted to ask myself as well, what do we expect from a Saw film? And how could we actually make something that doesn't complicate, you know, the history and the canon of Saw, but it still builds upon what has been set up in the last few films. I feel like the idea of doing a weird investigation-like film is interesting, but at the end of the day, they've been doing that for all the films. Most of the films, their structure is we're following the victims of the traps and we're following the cops who are desperately trying to figure out everything, and and then there are a couple of plot twists and stuff like that. I feel like it would be interesting not to have the cops at all, just want the victims to be there, or I definitely want someone to step up and represent really the legacy of Jigsaw and not be just a copycat killer who doesn't understand the rules and who is there to actually bend the rules to just kill people in the cheapest way possible. I feel like there is a lot of potential in this series, and I feel like there are so many things that haven't been explored. For example, most of the traps tend to take place in abandoned places, in really dark places. I feel like it would be really weird, for example, to see a Saw film that is set up in a forest, or a Saw film that is set up on a completely different place, or maybe like a futuristic Saw. I mean, if you think about like the Friday the 13th franchise, if you think about the Halloween franchise, if you think about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and all those slasher franchise, the interesting thing about them is that sometimes they took really weird narrative choices and at the end of the day it paid off, or sometimes it led to incredibly stupid films. But even the stupid films, they are 100% more interesting than trying to recreate the same thing over and over and over again, swapping the elements back and forth, or trying to make this story more and more complex, one film after the other. So you know what, imagine a Saw films that is taking place in space, like on a spaceship. Why not? Go 200 years in the future and someone has found a secret book of Saw, and they're using the book of Saw to punish the future humanity in some kind of way. Or go completely crazy. What if, for example, instead of targeting one person at a time, or instead of targeting groups of people, the next Saw films could be about killing a lot of people. One trap is for just 50 people, another trap is for 100 people, and another trap is, for example, for an entire country. It sounds stupid, but sometimes playing with those stupid ideas, it's when it turns out interesting and when it turns out to be more fun. I feel like there are a lot of traps that they need to forget about. Just by looking at this film, I think they really need to forget about just cutting fingers or you having to give up a limb. Those kind of ideas, they've been used and reused in so many different Saw films. So I feel like they really need to inject some new energy in the traps themselves, and maybe it would be interesting to have a change of tone as well. They've tried to change it visually, they tried to change it narratively, but maybe if you had the change of tone, maybe it would be more of a satire, or maybe, as I said before, if it started mixing with other subgenres like science fiction, or maybe give the franchise to someone who could really inject it with like a political message like Jordan Peele. So for me, Spiral is definitely not a recommendation. I wouldn't pay to see it. I'll maybe wait for it to come to streaming and watch it for free. Having said that, let me know if you're a fan of the Saw franchise. Let me know if you liked all the changes that they've introduced with the last two films. Let me know what's your favorite Saw film within the franchise. Having said that, don't forget to subscribe and like this video because it always helps. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game. There is only one key to open the device. It's in the stomach of your dead cellmate. You better hurry up. Live or die. Make your choice.
Da 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 da.